piano. I'm going to use a music stand or use that. Let me grab this little one. No, it's that one. I'm just going to use this. Hey, first off, welcome. Good to see you guys. I'm Ed. If you are new to New Life, let me just introduce myself to you. I am a 45-year-old young fella who's been pastoring here for a long time, and I'm excited to have you here. For everyone here who, we know each other really well, I'm glad to be here right this morning because I get to share the Word of God with you guys, so that's exciting. Let me introduce myself a little bit more. I've also been married for 18 years to my bride, Tammy. Tammy's here. You'll recognize her because she's the stunningly beautiful one. I mean, everyone's awesome in the room, of course, but you'll see the one that stands out. You'll see that's Tammy. So maybe say hi to her later. Also, today is kind of a special day in our family. Let me introduce you to this little young lady. She is Abigail Grace, and she turned 11 years old today. And yeah, clap for that. She made it. Odds were against her, to be honest with you. But she made it. Let me tell you, we started a Bible study on the campus of Ohio State in 2002 with 6 students. It was awesome. In 2003, we kind of grew and grew and grew, and we decided to plant a church, and we got a band, and we did some preaching stuff, so it turned into look more like what you see today, only a few less people. And we started the service in 2003, and it kept growing, and then we started having Bible studies all over campus. And that next year, in 2004, and back then it was a semester or a quarter system, and the quarter didn't start until September. And on September 26th of 2004 was the very first service of the year, and we held it at night. So Tammy and I, we were at the service on Sunday night, and then when it closed, we went straight to the hospital. And then we were at the hospital all night long. Tammy did a little bit more than I did, I'd say. And then she finally had the baby that next day at 12:53 on September 27th of 2004. And so that's kind of how that went. We do have another little girl too named Carly, and she's awesome. So that's a little bit about me. Glad to be here, seriously. I've been able to watch New Life grow and follow Christ and send students out all over the world doing incredible mission work, and people serving in their home churches, now when they've graduated and found places to be. It's been awesome. I'm super excited. I don't know if you guys know this, but one of the vision of New Life is that we would see the campus thrive. And we believe that comes when you're connected to the source of life, namely Jesus Christ. And as you connect to Jesus, your life is just going to change from the inside out because of who He is, by the very nature of being God in the flesh, changes you. And we believe part of the vision of New Life Church is to help students and help people on the campus connect to Jesus. And as they do that, they're going to flourish, they're going to thrive. We also believe that we want to see our church affect the city, and it consequently affect the culture. And one of my main responsibilities this year is to actually explore doing a church plant in the city. And last Sunday, we had something really cool happen. We started a Bible study up on the north end of Columbus, and we had 11 adults and 5 children and 2 high school seniors who were kind of watching the kids. So we had like our first little Bible study that's a possible church plant in the city. And so it's exciting for me to see what's going to happen as New Life here at OSU and New Life in the city kind of, grow up together, and hopefully provide a place to some of you guys that, when you stay in Columbus, you'll have a place to go someday. Well, we'll see, but it's super exciting. That's a little bit about me. I got to tell you, years ago, I was serving at this church in Gahanna, Ohio called New Life, which is kind of like our mama church. And I was serving in a ministry called Awana. Now, you have to grow up in a certain circle to know what Awana is. Anyone here know Awana? Awana is like kids' Bible club stuff. So parents drop their kids off, kids play lots of games, get their energy out, and then they study Bible verses and memorize them. And if they memorize them, they get treats and gifts and stuff like that. It's an awesome little thing. You're talking 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, okay? Now, at that time, I was not a parent, and they asked me if I wanted to come and be a helper, like one of the leaders, and I'm like, okay, sure. I had no idea what I was doing. So what I did was I looked for the guys, and the leaders of the guys who were like, who knows what they're doing? I'll just follow the guy, The guy I found was an 80-some-year-old guy named Mr. Dean. Now, Mr. Dean was older than most of your grandparents are right now. And when I say he's old, he looked old. He looked like he may fall over and die at any moment. I mean that with the most respect. I mean, just a beautiful man, but he just looked tiny, like he was going to fall apart. Anyway, this tiny little man who was, you know, on the edge, and you know, he really didn't live much longer than that time we had in water. But you ever talk to people like that? You ever talk to someone like that? You have a grandparent in your life that, you know how they talk a little bit different? Almost like they don't really care about being politically correct. They just tell you the truth. It's like, I don't have enough time to waste with small talk. Here's what you need to know. Boom. That was Mr. Dean. And he taught me everything I need to know to lead the kids there in Awana. It was awesome. But one night, okay, so here's what happens at Awana. So there's the game time, and then there's the kids do their verse time, and then at the end, one of the leaders will talk to the guys, and the leader will talk to the women. Well, one day, Mr. Dean gets up there, and he dresses in his World War II outfit from like 1945, which still fit him. And he brought in a bayonet, like, think huge bayonet. So the kids were like this. I'm like, Mr. Dean, what are you doing? Bringing a sword in this place. He gets up there and goes, this is what we used to kill our enemy back in 1945. I'm like, Mr. Dean, you can't say these kids are going to have nightmares about it with you. Anyway, he did share the gospel too, which was great, but that's what I remember about it. Let me tell you what I learned from talking to this man, you know, he's at the end of his life. He's on the last quarter, the last walk before he's going to be done. This is what I learned from him. In our conversations, he just cherished Jesus. He just absolutely was enamored with Jesus. He was serving as a deacon in the church. He was doing calisthenics at the old folks' home, where he would show up on a weekly basis just to connect to the younger men, and he would lead the calisthenics. He was serving in a prison ministry on a weekly basis, doing services for prisoners so they could hear about Jesus. He was coming down to Ohio State on Saturday afternoons just to get in conversation with people coming in and out of the game about Jesus. And this is what he said. He goes, you can never retire from being a servant of God. You can never retire from being a servant of God. And I just remember thinking, okay, obviously you can't bring a bayonet and talk to little kids. That's a dumb idea. But he had this heart that spoke so much louder than even any of his words. And there's just something to be cherished about, you know, this older person in your life that you get to see even for a short window. I bring it up because you may not know it. This whole series we've been going on and studying in the book of Ecclesiastes is written by an older man named Solomon, who was the king of Israel at its zenith in time. And he's writing this book talking about all the things in life that we might want, the purposes of life, whether we want, you know, to find joy, or find prestige, or find power, or find our satisfaction in life. And here he is at the end of his life, and I want you to hear this verse. He says in Ecclesiastes 12, verse 1, an interesting statement from this older king who's lived a huge life. He says this, remember your Creator in the days of your youth. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth. So let's say you're here and you've been following, you know, Christ for like most of your life, okay? Here's a question for you. You're still considered young. You're way younger than Solomon was. So what's it like for you to remember God in your youth? And if you're here and you're like, hey, I don't even know that I'm going to follow Jesus with my life. I'm just trying to figure all this out. Wouldn't you at least want to know this is what the Bible says about following God in your youth? So no matter where you're at, here's what I'm hoping today, that I can communicate something from this book that might help explain what it means to follow God, to remember God in your youth, to embrace or leverage your youth for God. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn to the book of 1 Samuel, okay? This is found in way back in the Old Testament. We're going to have some scriptures, I think, on the screen, so you'll be able to see that there. And I'm going to explain from this story about a young warrior named Jonathan. Jonathan's one of my heroes, okay? Jonathan was the son of Saul. So let me explain, history-wise, okay? You guys heard of Moses? You guys remember Moses? The Israelites are down in captivity in Egypt. God gives them Moses. He brings them up out of Egypt. They get into the land, right? They're traveling around for like 40 or so years. And then the guy who succeeds him is a guy named Joshua. Remember Joshua? He goes in, gets through the wall at Jericho. You guys remember that story? Gets into the land. And then he kind of, there's a lot of stuff has to happen. But eventually they kind of get the entire land of Israel, which becomes Israel. And then through several generations, many generations, there were these leaders called judges. So think Gideon, think Samson, people like that. And then eventually the people of Israel cry out because they want to be like all the other nations, and they want a king who essentially is going to be a military leader and fight their battles. And they cry out to God. God, we want a king. He's like, I'm your king. No, not you. We want a king. Give us a king. And he's like, seriously, I'm your king. No, but we want a king. So he gives them Saul, which is a really bad decision. Anyway, Saul becomes the military leader of Israel, and his son is Jonathan, who's probably younger than most of you guys in this room fighting in the army. They have an enemy, the Philistines. The Philistines have this huge military. So they've got thousands of people. They have chariots, they have horses, they have swords, they have stuff. Israel, they got like pitchforks. They got clubs. They got they got a couple hatchets, That's their military. When they realize they picked a fight with the Philistines, most of the military runs and hides. They're down to like 600 dudes. That's it. Here's where the story picks up. And the first thing I just want you to hear and understand is that Jonathan remembered God as a young warrior. Here's what it says in verse 1. One day, Jonathan, son of Saul, said to the young man bearing his armor, "Come, let us go over to the Philistine outpost on the other side." But he did not tell his father. Probably smart. Dad would have said, "No, you can go." Anyway, so he went anyway. Bad kid. Skip on down to verse 4. On each side of the pass that Jonathan intended to cross to reach the Philistine outpost was a cliff. One was called Bozez and the other Sena. One cliff stood to the north toward Michmash, and the other to the south toward Geba. Now Jonathan said to his young armor-bearer, "Come, let's go over to the outpost to those uncircumcised fellows. Perhaps the Lord will act on our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few." "Do all that you have in mind," his armor-bearer said. "Go ahead, I'm with you, heart and soul." Now Jonathan said, "Come, then we will cross over toward the men and let them see us. Now if they then say to us, 'Wait there until we come to you,' we will stay where we are and not go up to them. But if they say, 'Come up to us,' we will climb up, because that will be our sign that the Lord has given them into our hands." So both of them showed themselves to the Philistine outpost. "Look," said the Philistines, "the Hebrews are crawling out of their holes they were hiding in." Now the men at the outpost shouted to Jonathan and his armor-bearer, "Come up to us and we'll teach you a lesson." So Jonathan said to his armor-bearer, "Climb up after me. The Lord has given them into the hand of Israel." Now Jonathan climbed up, using his hands and his feet, with his armor-bearer right behind him. And the Philistines fell before Jonathan, and his armor-bearer followed and killed behind him. In that first attack, Jonathan and his armor-bearer killed 20-some men in an area about half an acre. So just imagine the situation. So the Philistines kind of have the whole area. They have the high ground. The Israelites are kind of hiding. They're in like crevices and holes and trying to stay out of the way so they don't get seen because they're trying to live, right? Well, Jonathan says, we're going to climb up behind them in between these two ridges, and we're going to come up on the other side. And here's the plan, okay? Me and the armor bearer. We're going to go up there, and then we're going to show ourselves. We're going to give away our positions to them in the high ground. Okay? And then if they say, come up there, then we know God's with us. What's plan B? Well, they're going to know where we're at. That's not a very smart plan. But the armor bearer says, okay, let's do it. All right, you go first. So anyway, Jonathan kind of climbs up, and here's the deal. He's kind of fighting them off, and there's a garrison. They got plenty of people, and he's kind of fighting. And so imagine he's in the fight, a guy falls, and the armor bearer's like, And then so the next guy, okay, so they take out like 20 guys. Let me tell you what happens from that point on. So after that battle happened, there's like 600 guys sitting back with Saul, who's the king of Israel. He's in the back kind of, and kind of really out of the way. And then this fight happens, and then God sends a confusion on the Philistines. And the Philistines start getting kind of crazy in their minds, and they start fighting each other. Then God sends an earthquake. So imagine there's this fight taking place, and the Philistines are now crazy in their minds, and they're kind of fighting each other, and there's an earthquake. And then Saul says, hey, we should probably go fight these guys. So Saul gets his guys, they get up there, and they realize the Philistines are already killing each other and on the run, and there's only a few guys left. God brought about a victory that day that changed the entire nation and changed the war between the Philistines and the Israelites. All because one young warrior, one young guy decided to step out and trust God. And then God acted on his behalf. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? That's the beauty of Jonathan. I think what I love about Scripture, you read these stories and you think, isn't God like some kind of, who is he? And you see that he's a God who actually was trying to save his people, but he was waiting for them to trust. I love Jonathan. He really appeals to me. There's something about a guy who says, look, all right, I'm facing a war that I can't win. I have no idea. But here's the deal. I'm not going to die back here. I'm going to die going forward. Some of you guys have been invited to the advance this weekend coming up. you want to know where it gets the name? Right here. Right here. You see, we just expect that when we go forward towards God, He's going to meet us in that place. So when we go to an advance, which some of you guys might remember as a retreat, maybe from growing up, going to camp or something like that, we go on a place to connect to God. That's what New Life is doing this weekend. Going to connect to God together as a group. It's going to be awesome. And I love Jonathan because he's a young warrior, leveraging his youth. Now look, we're obviously not in a war time now, right? We have one of the safest places to live in the world right now. But there are people in their youth who will leverage their faith on behalf of the bigger war that's taking place in our world. You guys might know about the problem of human trafficking. Some friends of mine went down to a conference several years ago, and they heard up front about the problem of human trafficking. Let me just read some stats or facts and kind of an idea of what human trafficking is. Human trafficking is when an individual is forced, coerced, or manipulated into forced sex or labor, which affects 20 to 27 million people in the world who are held in bondage. That's by the U.S. Department of State. Each year, approximately over 1,000 Ohio youth are targeted and coerced into human trafficking. Right here in Ohio. Due to Ohio's 5 major interstates creating easy access for youth transportation, Ohio children are particularly vulnerable to traffickers. And Toledo, Ohio, is the 4th largest recruitment site in the nation, according to the Ohio Attorney General. Now listen, if you see a problem like that, human trafficking, nobody is okay with that. I don't care what faith you're a part of. You could be an atheist or you could be a staunch Christian. It doesn't matter. Everyone agrees that human trafficking is a horrible evil. What are you going to do about it? Well, I have a friend named Felicia Kalin. When she was 23 years old, along with some other friends, had been at that conference and decided, we are not going to sit back and do nothing. They didn't know how they were going to beat human trafficking, but they decided to put on a fashion show right here at Ohio State. In the fashion show, what happens is these dresses come out, the models come out in these dresses, and it tells a story. The dresses come out, they look really vibrant and awesome at the beginning, but then they slowly get kind of black and dark, and where the dresses come up over their faces and tie their hands behind their back. And it tells the story of someone who's been taken into bondage and into abuse, and then they're literally violated, and they lose their identity. And slowly, you see the dresses start to come back around as they've been set free and restored. It's all a picture of the gospel, that we've all been affected by sin and taken into this corruption called sin, where we can be set free in Christ. What my friend Felicia, what she did in that fashion show, she said, look, we're going to do something on this campus to raise money, to give money to the people who are fighting sex trafficking. And they raised over $10,000 at that event. Isn't that crazy? That 23-year-old girl decided, you know what, with her friends, they started a nonprofit organization. That nonprofit organization, now called Unchained, has been fighting against human trafficking for several years. They have done shows all over the place, as far away as Harrisburg, which is near Philly. Here in Columbus, they just did one in Kent State last weekend. They partnered with the Limited brands and were able to make bracelets that people sold in all of the Limited stores. They raised over $30,000 to go towards the victims and people who are fighting against human trafficking. Now look, when you're in a war, you see something like this is not okay. You can sit back and do nothing, or you can say, I'm getting in on that. I'm going to do something. I'm going to go forward, even if I have no idea what I'm doing. That's what it means to leverage your youth. Felicia did it at 23. That is not much older, and maybe younger than some of you right here in the room. I love that. Love warriors who decide to leverage their youth. Well, listen, I got to say just a couple more things, just some ideas about this passage that I think, okay, all right, maybe you don't identify with, Jonathan, and I get that. But there's some things in here that I think no matter where you're at, you can take it away and start to understand what it looks like to remember God in your youth, okay? First one is this. It's in your bulletin. You can write this down. It says, every person who follows God faces an enemy. Every person who follows God faces an enemy. In verse 11 and 12, it says this, that when they showed themselves, they basically said, look, the Philistines, the Hebrews are crawling out of their holes and they're hiding. The men of the outpost shouted to Jonathan, to his armor bearer, come up to us and we'll teach you a lesson. See, the enemies were there taunting them, taunting these people who were trying to step out in their faith, and then they were threatening them. I think, we have to realize that you and I, we have an enemy too. That if you're a Christ follower, and you've read anything about the Bible, then you know that there's a real battle going on between God and his enemy, Satan. And in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, I'm going to read verse 11 and 12. This is the Apostle Paul wrote this letter to the church at Ephesus. And verse 11 says this, put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in heavenly realms. And it basically, it means that, when you're trying to follow God, there's someone who's actually working against you. Now, you may not have experienced it, you may not realize what's happening, but have you ever felt like this? Have you ever said, okay, I'm going to try to follow God? And you kind of set in your mind, like, I'm going to start living this way, I'm going to start going to the church, I'm going to go to a Bible study, I'm going to read my Bible, I'm going to pray, I'm going to not do some things. You start thinking like that, and all of a sudden, thoughts start creeping into your mind, and you're like, where did that come from? Intense temptations come to you. Have you ever felt like, deep down, okay, I should be judging that person. You're just like, oh, I don't like that person. Oh, I don't like them. These things that happen inside you, you don't even realize where they're coming from. Listen, there's an enemy who is desperately trying to get you, mostly to not trust God and to follow your own desires. Let me just tell you a real quick story, real fast, because you probably didn't grow up exactly like me. I have a dad who's like real macho. I'm 5'5", and 150 pounds. Okay? Some of you guys are looking at me and you're afraid. I know. Like, you look at me and you quake in your shoes and you think, if it's going down, I want it to lift me. I get that. All right? But listen, I wasn't always this big. When I was growing up, I was the smallest kid in my class. I was the smallest kid on my team every time I played it. My dad was 6 foot tall, 220 pounds. He had dark skin, dark hair, and had a permanent 5 o'clock shadow. He played college football for 1 year at Virginia, in Georgia at a military college. He was an amateur boxer, had over 30 amateur fights. Everything he talked about at home were blowing people up and knocking people out and, taking out, football players. I mean, he was just tough, macho dude. And that's everything he affirmed. He tells me, he goes, listen, Ed, here's the deal. I don't ever want you to start a fight, but if you have to, here's the deal. You take them out. And I have a brother who's like a really tough kid. He's just like my dad. He says to me, he goes, Eddie, listen, you can't do what Dad's telling you. I'm like, well, he was so don't start a fight. He goes, listen, if you think it's going to happen, just start swinging. I'm like, oh. He's like, listen, if someone hits you first, you're going to be dead. You're too small. I'm like, okay. I have no idea how to fight. I'm not a fighter. I'm small. Here's the deal. One day I was 16 years old, and I'm at a gas station. I was just going to the gas station with my other brother who's small like me, which was a bad mistake on my part. It was midnight. We go to the gas station, and I was just getting air in my bike tire because, like a typical 16-year-old, I just want my bike to work. So, I'm getting air in the tire. It's midnight. I notice these 3 dudes are walking. Okay? 3 dudes are just walking. And I see one of them kind of coming near me. I'm like, oh, maybe I know him. I put the bike tire in the car. I turn around. Like, oh, do I know this guy? Bam! With this part of his hand right in my nose. I learned later he actually cracked the cartilage in my nose. But luckily he hit me straight. Otherwise it would have been to the side. Now you can see later I have a nice little bump there. You can look real close, but it's not to the side, which I'm very grateful the guy didn't plow my nose to the side. But nevertheless, this guy hit me. Now if you've been hit with a ball or hit with a rock or just hit the ground and you've been hit with a fist, when you hit the nose, the first thing that happens is your eyes go blurry. You're like, ugh, and flies are flying around your head, and you're just kind of like, Anyway, so I'm sitting there. I put my hands up like, okay, well, I gotta fight this guy. So he's throwing kicks at me. And I'm like, they look like a kind of slow motion kick to the head. I just went, I don't practice lots of kicks on a regular basis. I don't know if you do, but I don't. So I'm kind of like, well, this is what this looks like, okay? So I'm sitting there, and I'm kind of like, and he says, you better get back in the car. I'm really going to beat you up. He had some other words in there, and so I'm like, why are you telling me to leave? Why are you telling me to leave? That's what I was thinking in my mind. Why are you telling me to get back in the car? I was thinking, maybe he's afraid. And then I felt kind of like this rush of adrenaline, then my brother gets out of the car, best thing that ever happened in my life. Now, he's small like me. If it had been my other brother, it would have been great because he was with me. But my brother steps out, the dude squared off me closer than you, Mitra. The guy looks right at me and he looks at my brother. Well, we're squared off. I'm like, this is my chance. So I stepped in with the left and I clocked him in the left. And I took my hand, I'm like, I just, pow, right in the face, knocked him clean over. Why are you laughing? It's a true story. Listen, I broke my hand in 2 the moment I hit him. I want to be tough. Someday it might happen, but the toughest I could be, I hit guys where they could, and my bone breaks in 2. I guess you're supposed to hit him with this part of your hand, but I'm not a boxer. So I look at my brother, I'm like, before those 2 other guys got over there, I'm like, get out of here, my hand just broke. He's like, get in the car. So we get in the car. Maybe he got hurt, probably not, but I had to go to the hospital, broken nose, broken hand. Listen, here's the deal. I was never out looking for a fight with anybody. Never. I don't want to hurt anyone. I was never out looking for a fight with anyone. Sometimes you just acquire an enemy, you don't realize it. Let me explain something to you. If you hear the message of the gospel, I'm going to explain that in a minute, but if you hear the message of the gospel, you realize that all God really wants is to be connected to you, and through his son, you can be in relationship with him. But as soon as you say yes to that, there's an enemy that is trying to destroy you and trying to get you to not trust in God. It's just going to happen. You'll see it. You'll see things happen with friends and family members who are just kind of there against you. Lastly, I just want to say this last thing quickly, is that every person who follows God faces a battle within themselves. This is the real battle, guys. The real battle. And in 14 verse 2, it says this: Saul was staying on the outskirts of Gibeah under a pomegranate tree in Migron. You know, Jonathan went forward. Jonathan said, well, let's go. Here's the plan. If we go, God can save us up there no matter how many people there are. He's like, I'm going forward. Saul was frozen. Absolutely frozen. Do you know what Saul's job was? To lead the military of Israel. To trust God as his king. He was completely frozen. And that's the whole battle. And I think for you and I, the real battle, what Jonathan did is Jonathan trusted in God. Do you find it interesting, a little bit interesting, that God didn't send the confusion and the earthquake until after someone in the army was willing to step up and trust in him? God didn't act until someone was willing to step out and trust. I think for us, that's the whole battle. Are we going to trust in God? A lot of us are completely frozen in that. I think that's what Solomon's been talking about this whole time. He's talking about all these things that you could live for. In the book of Ecclesiastes, if you haven't been here, let me explain. He's talking about all these desires we have. Desires for sex and for love and for prestige and for power. All the things that we think are going to make us happy. Money, relationships. And all of those things appeal to us because that's what we really want. And what God wants us to say, listen, I am more than all of that. Will you please trust in me? Would you be willing to lay your life down, lay down all those desires and say, look, I'm going to put God at the centerpiece of my life. Will you trust in me? And that's where the real battle is going to take place for every one of us. Are we going to trust in God? So I think if you're, whether you've been a church person your whole life or whether this is, day one for you, like, I'm going to stay out, I'm going to try to follow God. Like, no matter where you're at, listen. Let me explain what it really looks like to be someone who leverages God in their youth, to remember who God is. I think the best example is found in Jesus. If I could explain the gospel to you, I'd explain it as best I can like this. And I know it's kind of a complex thing, but God makes a world, and he puts us in the world, and he makes us in his image. The purpose being that in us we can see things like we see love, and we see respect, and we see honor, and we see loyalty. All these things that God is about, he puts them in us so that we will start to wonder and see who God is. But we reject God. And as a result, the world becomes corrupt. And we basically say, I would rather live for me than to trust in you as my God. And the world becomes corrupt. Now, we know that. I mean, everyone in this room, you don't even have to agree with me that the Bible is legitimate doctrine. You don't have to agree. But you can agree that there is corruption in this world. Human trafficking would only take place in a world where men are in charge and have no accountability. That's where human trafficking would take place. That's called corruption. We all agree, right? But could you also agree that there's corruption inside you? That there are times when you have to admit it, when you're like no one else is around and you think about it. If you live the way the Bible told you to live, you wouldn't ever feel that feeling you have in your soul when you think about some of the things you've done. That's because that corruption lives in you too. It lives in me. It's called sin. It's basically saying, I'm going to live for me and not for you. But God didn't allow us to stay this way. Instead of just creating a religion where you create a bunch of rules and you try to live up to those rules, instead of doing any of that, he basically sent his son down in the flesh to live the perfect life that you and I couldn't live. So that he would pay the penalty for all of our corruption. so that the justice of God would be carried out, but the mercy of God would be on display in his son, Jesus. So that you and I would recognize Jesus and go, okay, I want to be reconciled to the Father. I want to be connected to him again. And because of what Christ did, that gives us the opportunity. But it's not enough to say, okay, all right, I'm connected to you. If you're really connected to God, you'll become an agent of change to the corruption in this world. He didn't just put us here so we're like, oh, let's all collect in my little church building to all be happy and we'll eat, just eat together, it'll be great. No, he put us into this world. We do meet together, yes, but we're in this world and we meet so that we can encourage each other to be young warriors who advance the name of God. Armed not with swords, but armed with the love of God in our hearts. Armed with the peace of God. Armed with the care of God in our hearts. And that's what we're supposed to do to reconcile this world and make a difference. He does not need us. He's really good at what he does. But he gives us that opportunity to connect to him. Where are you at? Let me just look at the time real fast. So I have another minute or two. Let me just share one more quick story. I met this guy on campus a couple years ago. Young student. He was an Asian American. So he was raised in an American and Asian home really together. And so he got kind of two different worldviews. They let him choose whatever he wanted to believe. And he decided that he really didn't believe that God existed. When I met him, he told me he was an atheist. I said, well, I'm actually looking for an atheist to kind of look over my material I'm working on that I teach college students. And it's about God. Obviously, it's biased. It's Christian. I'm biased. I understand that. I'm looking for someone who's completely unbiased who will look at material and tell me where it sucks. You know? Tell me, does this suck? Will you tell me the truth? He goes, yeah, I can do that. I said, I'll buy you lunch. He's like, I eat, so this is great. So we met on a regular basis. We met for like 5 weeks. And in the 5 weeks, I explained kind of this course where it talked about, does God exist? Which I talked about, the evidence for the existence of God. We talked about where morality comes from. That all of us have experienced morality. Where did that come from? And that points to a moral lawgiver. And I talked about the Bible. Is the Bible legitimate doctrine? I talked about Jesus. Why is Jesus different than any other religious figure, any other human who's ever lived? Namely, he rose from the dead. Look, if a guy rises from the dead, that kind of, that's a trump card, I rose from the dead. How about you? So Jesus rose from the dead. At the end of it, I'm looking at him, I said, hey, what do you think? He goes, well, I definitely do. I said, what do you think? He goes, well, I definitely believe there's a God. Right? Great. I said, what do you think of the material? Where is it good or bad? He gave me his opinions. I said, what do you really think? He goes, I think based on what you're sharing with me, everyone should be a Christian. I'm like, yes, you and I agree. I said, what about you? He goes, oh, not me, I'm not ready for that. I said, what do you mean you're not ready for that? He says, if I became a Christian, I wouldn't be able to do some things that I want to do. I said, what do you mean, like have sex, party, that kind of stuff? He goes, yeah, I mean, like that stuff. I said, that's like going after Taco Bell when you get a steak. I said, all right, I said, okay, I understand. And I didn't want to push, and I promised him I would not push or try to curse him in any way. I said, okay, I just want to listen. I said, will you promise me just to give these a chance at some point in your life? He goes, yeah, I promise. I said, okay. But my friend was just being honest. He's basically saying, I want what Solomon is saying. Solomon is saying, chase after this and after this and after this. That's what he's saying. I inside have these cravings and I have to go after them. And that's the meaning of life, to follow my cravings. Because if I just get what I crave, I'll have some kind of euphoria or peace. I want that. And I'm not ready to go with this Jesus guy because it seems like Jesus is kind of telling me I can't have that stuff. And so I'm not doing that because I'm not ready for that. Maybe after I have all that stuff, I'll come back to Jesus. He seems like a good guy, right? I like him. But he's just being honest. But don't you think even in this room that sometimes we do the same thing? We just show up at church, We show up and sometimes, nod our head and pray a little bit. And we think the meaning of life is, okay, I'll just check off the church box. But deep down, what we really want is to find the very things that Solomon was saying. I think that's what's going to give us happiness. Just one last time, I'm going to tell you what Solomon said at the end of his incredible life, his life that he lived. In Ecclesiastes 12, verse 13 says this, now all has been heard, all the conclusion of man. The whole purpose of man is to try to find happiness. Here's what he says. The conclusion of the matter is fear God, keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. The whole thing God wants from you is that you would know him, and as a result you would follow him. And in doing so, you would actually experience the peace and the meaning he made for your life. And when you find that meaning, you will naturally become an agent of change in this world, because it's impossible to be affected by such love and not let it spill out on other people. I just want to challenge you guys with that today, and I'm hoping that somehow, some way, no matter where you're at, that means something to somebody in this room, wherever you're at. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have you just take a second and just kind of close your eyes, and no matter where you're at, just kind of talk to God for a second. Maybe just acknowledge where you're at with Him. Just, God, this is where I'm at. I want to believe in you. Maybe it's, God, I've been trying to follow you with all my heart. Please just keep encouraging me. No matter where you're at, I just want to ask you, if you could have a conversation with God today, what would you ask of Him? Just in your mind, just kind of verbalize that to God. Is what Jesus did on the cross, is that enough for you to be willing to lay down your life and start trusting in Him? It's the fact that He's willing to meet you there when you have faith enough to overcome the fear that might be in your life to take steps towards God. Is the fact that He's willing to take your penalty on the cross, is that enough for you to be willing to say, look, I can't live my life just for me anymore. Let me just pray for us and for you, and when we're done, I just want you to stand up and let's sing these songs back to God as a praise to Him. God, I just pray somehow, some way that you're speaking to us and you're speaking to me. I know I ask God to just teach us to leverage our life for you. Teach us to start in our youth and not wait until we think we're going to get the things that we want before we start following you. But God, help us to lay our lives down even now and that we would follow you with all of our heart. Teach us to trust in you. But God, we'll count on you to meet us in that spot, because if you don't meet us, we're kind of out here on our own, God. But we trust that if we take steps towards you, you're going to meet us in that spot. And for everyone in this room, God, I pray that you would meet them right where they're at. You would coax them to take their next step, whatever that may be. Whether it's a first-time step of responding to you, or whether it's a step of just obedience that we've been neglecting, or whether it's just a pat on the back that we just need to keep on. God, as we sing these songs of praise to you, I pray that you would just be honored by what we're saying to you in this song. In your name we pray. Amen.